In many organizations, managers and decision makers have an idea of artificial intelligence as a kind of black box. This is about their misconception of what is truly artificial intelligence, what artificial intelligence can do and what artificial intelligence cannot do. Basically, many managers have an idea that artificial intelligence is a potential substitute to human intelligence. But this is not the case. Why? Because artificial intelligence needs some human input in order to work and function. Even the generative form of artificial intelligence needs some human input. Failure to understand that artificial intelligence is just an artificial form of intelligence may create some organizational problems, and delegating decisions to artificial intelligence and fully trust these decisions may be harmful also for employees or for the society as a whole. I guess Dutch people are very happy with all of the victories of Max Verstappen, but all of these victories are not possible only because of the great talent of Max Verstappen, but also because of the characteristics of the car and also because of Anna Schmitz. Anna Schmitz is the chief strategist of Red Bull Racing, and even in an industry like Formula One, where there is an extensive usage of data and algorithms for decision making, the human component is still important. A chief strategy in Formula One is indeed responsible for instance, anticipating a pit stop, or for instance, to decide when is the proper moment to set the lap time. Moreover, a chief strategist has still a human component, and so she can feel the real perception of the driver when he is driving. When using artificial intelligence for organizational decisions, we can classify several types of problems. The first type of problem is a syntactic one, in the sense that, algorithms work on the basis of some code provided by a human programmer. But we know, at least since 100 years from the famous theorems of Kurt Gödel and John von Neumann, that in a certain system of rules, some statements cannot be proven to be true. The truth status of a statement can only be stated by an agent outside of the system. Put simply, if we consider the algorithm as the system and the human as someone outside of the system, we see that even in the presence and in the massive use of algorithms and data, the human component is still important. The human component is thus still very important unless the organization doesn't want to fully delegate the decisions to algorithms. However, the problem is that in the vast majority of cases, we don't know about the logical process followed by the algorithm, and the algorithm cannot communicate this logical process to other people. And so what happens in the case of key decisions in organizations affecting employees, or even for governmental decisions affecting our lives? The second type of problem relates to the semantics of things, in the sense that humans strongly engage in abstracting reasoning. This is not possible for artificial intelligence. Why? Because machines have no perceptions, even in the presence of sensors, and machines have no sentiments. More generally, machines have no conscience about themselves and the others. Take the example of the concept of empathy. If you ask ChatGPT to define empathy, probably the machine will search for all possible definitions and all possible images of empathy. It will also search for probabilities and frequencies associated to other words typically associated with empathy, but in the end, a true meaning of empathy is not possible. And so all of the decisions fully delegated to machines cannot incorporate sentiments and perceptions. But this could be very problematic, for instance, if you consider decisions associated to health-related problems. The third type of problem is associated to lack of imagination. As we know, many scientific revolutions happen also because of intuition and imagination. Take, for example, the case of the relativity theory of Einstein. Einstein was able to shift the concept of time from an absolute concept to a relative concept. But Einstein was strongly influenced by Kant and Mach in thinking time as something subjective. We know from recent empirical evidence that, for instance, the use of artificial intelligence pushes consumers to behave less ethically than without the presence of artificial intelligence, because of a lower perception of the feeling of guilt. A second practical problem relates to employees. In many cases, employees do not feel empowered to take decisions anymore, especially when they cannot overturn the decisions provided by artificial intelligence, or more generally, the automation of a process makes humans feel less responsible for the outcome of that process. A third practical problem is associated to information asymmetries in organizations. And this is a paradox. Why? Because one of the main motivations to introduce intelligent machines in organizations is to reduce the information asymmetry between the top of the organizations and the lower levels of the organizations. But the problem is that the decision maker, for instance, the CEO of an organization, has no clear priors about the possible effects of artificial intelligence in terms of productivity, performance, or organizational dynamics. And so people at the lower levels have more information about the usage of machines, and so to some extent they can game the boss. So they can reduce systematically their efforts, they can also collude, and so the CEO is not capable of understanding what is the real problem. If there is a problem, they can always blame the machine. And instead, even with a very limited use of the machine, they can improve their own performance or their team performance, and the boss is happy. But the boss does not know that the potential of artificial intelligence is very far from that point. My recommendations for organizations using artificial intelligence for strategic decision-making are mainly three. The first one is that the human component is still very important, and so organizations need to value the human capital in their organization. Exercising human judgment doesn't mean that the human judgment is better than the automated judgment by algorithms, from an economic point of view or from a moral point of view. But at least a human decision maker can communicate to the other people in the organization the logical process she followed to take a decision. She can engage with other people and having social interactions, and through this dialogic approach, a certain decision can be amended, changed, or refined. This is not possible for algorithms. In order to have strong human decision makers in organizations, reskilling and upskilling of employees is extremely important, and also the design of the interactions between the humans and the machines is extremely important. A second recommendation is about the limits of artificial intelligence. Organizations need to define which are the boundaries of strategic decision-making delegated to artificial intelligence, or at least giving the possibility to humans to overturn these decisions in order to empower people and make them feel very important for the organization. This empowerment of people is also very important to make people clearly understand what is truly artificial intelligence, what can be done with artificial intelligence, and what cannot be done with artificial intelligence. And the final recommendation is that profitability is important, but in order to achieve profitability in organization extensively using artificial intelligence, the well-being of employees and people in the organizations in general is extremely important. So, after the introduction of artificial intelligence, if you want to improve the performance and the social impact of your organizations, you need to focus on well-being.